Charlotte Luna walked briskly through the office lobby, her high heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows, but her mood was anything but sunny. She was late for a meeting, and her assistant's phone call earlier had only added to her frustration. As she turned a corner, she nearly slipped, her designer stilettos skidding on a wet patch of floor. "What is this?" she snapped, glaring down at the man crouched over a mop and bucket. He was tall, with broad shoulders and calloused hands, dressed in a janitor's uniform that had seen better days. He looked up at her calmly, his dark eyes unflinching. "Good morning, ma'am. I'll be done in just a moment," Charles Rich said, his voice steady, almost soothing. "Just a moment isn't good enough," Charlotte shot back, her irritation bubbling over. "This is a professional space. Do you expect people to wade through puddles?" Charles straightened up slowly, his movements deliberate. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but a little patience wouldn't hurt." Charlotte scoffed, brushing past him without another word. The faint scent of disinfectant lingered in the air as she hurried toward the elevators. In her world, people like Charles barely existed, at least, not beyond their utility. She didn't notice the quiet dignity in his posture or the way his hands were roughened by years of labor. Charles watched her go, shaking his head slightly. He'd met her type before, privileged, entitled, and entirely oblivious to the world beyond their bubble. As he wrung out his mop, his thoughts drifted to his daughter, Sophia. She was his anchor, the reason he kept going. She was studying nursing back in Accra, Ghana, and every dollar he earned went toward her education. He imagined her smile, the way she used to sit beside him, asking endless questions about the world. That evening, Charles sat on the stoop of his modest apartment, the hum of the city around him. His neighbor, a friendly mechanic named Kwame, handed him a steaming cup of tea. "How's work, Charlie?" Kwame asked, taking a sip of his own cup. Charles chuckled, his deep voice carrying a hint of weariness. "Same as always, though today, I had a run-in with one of those high and mighty types." Kwame raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Corporate lady, thinks the world revolves around her." "Something like that," Charles said, shaking his head. "But I've got bigger things to worry about." The next morning, Charlotte entered the office with the same air of self-importance, but something was different. Charles was in the lobby again, mopping the floor. This time, he wasn't alone. A young boy stood beside him, holding a smaller mop. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, his eyes wide with curiosity. "What's going on here?" Charlotte demanded, her tone sharp. Charles looked up, his expression unchanging. "This is Kwame's son. He wanted to see what hard work looks like." Charlotte frowned. "Isn't he supposed to be in school?" "He is," Charles replied, a hint of steel in his voice. "But there's more to education than books." The boy beamed up at Charles. "Mr. Rich says if you work hard and stay kind, you can achieve anything." Charlotte stared at him, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. She didn't like the feeling, it was too close to guilt, too close to self-awareness. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked away, the boy's words echoing in her mind. For days, she couldn't shake the image of Charles and the boy. It was as if the quiet defiance had planted a seed of doubt in her carefully curated world. Who was this janitor, really? What had shaped him, and why did his resilience bother her so much? Charlotte Luna swept into the office with her usual air of superiority. The early morning sun filtered through the tall windows, but her sharp words cut through the space like a storm. "Do you realize people like me have actual jobs to get to? You're slowing everyone down," she snapped at Charles Rich, who was quietly scrubbing a stubborn stain from the tiled floor. Several employees stopped to watch the exchange, their faces betraying discomfort and disbelief. Charles paused, straightened up, and gave her a measured nod. "Apologies, ma'am. I'll be done shortly," he said calmly, stepping aside to let her pass. But Charlotte wasn't done. As she brushed past him, she muttered loudly, "Maybe if people like him worked harder, they wouldn't be stuck cleaning floors. The comment stung, but Charles let it roll off his back. He had heard worse over the years, and he wasn't about to let someone like her rattle him. What Charlotte didn't realize was that her behavior wasn't just affecting Charles, it was making an impression on everyone who witnessed it. Over the next few weeks, Charlotte's condescension escalated. She seemed to relish making Charles's job harder. One morning, she deliberately spilled her coffee near his cleaning supplies. "Oops," she said with a smirk. "Guess you have something to do now." Another time, she left a pile of trash in the middle of her office floor with a sticky note that read, "Clean this up ASAP." Charles handled it all with quiet dignity. "Yes, Mom," he would say, his voice steady and polite. He refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction, and that only seemed to fuel her spite. Charlotte's cruelty wasn't limited to Charles. She also had her sights set on her main rival for the upcoming promotion, Edochie. Sophia was everything Charlotte wasn't: kind, empathetic, and respected by everyone in the office. Where Charlotte wielded her authority like a weapon, Sophia built bridges and earned trust. This made her a threat, and Charlotte was determined to undermine her at every turn. The perfect opportunity came during a high-stakes client meeting. Charlotte orchestrated a spill near the entrance of the conference room, knowing Charles would be called to clean it up. As he worked quietly, mop in hand, Charlotte seized the moment. She turned to the clients with a condescending laugh. "Imagine this," she said, gesturing toward Charles. "You're here to discuss multi-million-dollar campaigns, and this is the view you get." The clients exchanged uneasy glances, clearly uncomfortable with her tone. From her seat across the table, Sophia's jaw tightened. She couldn't stay silent. "Charlotte, that was unnecessary," she said firmly. Charlotte scoffed. "Oh, please, I'm just being honest. He's here to do a job, and I'm doing mine." Charles paused, his hands still gripping the mop handle. He straightened, his gaze steady as he met Charlotte's eyes. "Mom, I'm just doing what's asked of me. I hope you can say the same." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, Charlotte felt a flicker of unease. The room fell silent, the weight of his quiet dignity sinking into everyone present. Later that evening, as Charles walked home through the bustling streets of Accra, he replayed the moment in his mind. He had spent years rebuilding his life after losing everything: his construction business, his home, and even his wife. Now, all that mattered to him was sending money to his daughter, so she could finish nursing school. Meanwhile, Charlotte sat in her sleek office, staring at the city skyline. For reasons she couldn't quite articulate, Charles's words kept echoing in her mind. There was something in his tone, a quiet strength, that unsettled her. She had always prided herself on being untouchable, but today, a janitor had made her question her own reflection. The next morning, Charlotte arrived at the office earlier than usual. As she entered the lobby, she saw Charles arranging his cleaning supplies. He didn't look up, focused on his work. For the first time, Charlotte hesitated. She opened her mouth to say something but quickly shut it. She wasn't ready to confront whatever was stirring inside her. Unbeknownst to her, Charles noticed the pause. A small smile played on his lips as he continued mopping. The battle wasn't over, but a shift had begun. Charlotte Luna had no idea one of the junior employees had recorded her public humiliation of Charles Rich during the client meeting. By the end of the day, the video was making the rounds in the office, drawing a storm of criticism. Whispers filled the air as colleagues exchanged knowing glances. The backlash came swiftly. HR summoned Charlotte for a formal reprimand, and her once impeccable reputation took a significant hit. "It's ridiculous," Charlotte fumed during lunch with Edochie, her rival for the promotion. She stabbed at her salad with unnecessary force. "People are so sensitive these days. I was just telling the truth." Sophia set her fork down and met Charlotte's gaze. Her tone was calm but firm. "No, Charlotte, you were being cruel, and if you don't change, it's going to catch up with you." Charlotte scoffed, dismissing Sophia's warning. She couldn't see how her actions could have any real consequences. A week later, the CEO called a company-wide meeting to announce the long-awaited promotion. Charlotte strutted into the conference room, her head held high, fully expecting to hear her name. But when the CEO announced Sophia as the new vice president of marketing, the room erupted in applause. Charlotte sat frozen, her face pale with disbelief. After the meeting, she stormed into the CEO's office, slamming the door behind her. "I deserve that promotion," she shouted. "You're letting a janitor ruin my career." The CEO leaned back in his chair, his expression cold and unyielding. "No, Miss Luna, you ruined your career. Charles Rich has shown more professionalism and integrity than you ever have. If you can't treat people with respect, you don't belong here." Charlotte's fall from grace was swift. Within days, her behavior toward Charles and Sophia became the talk of the office. Clients began requesting to work exclusively with Sophia. Once surrounded by sycophants, Charlotte now found herself isolated. Meanwhile, Charles Rich's quiet resilience had not gone unnoticed. The CEO promoted him to facilities manager, a role that came with better pay, benefits, and the opportunity to mentor younger staff. Charles used his new position to create opportunities for others, just as he had always done in his construction days. One evening, as Charles was leaving the office, he noticed Charlotte sitting alone on a bench outside. Her once confident posture was gone, replaced by a slump of defeat. She stared at her phone, scrolling aimlessly. For a moment, Charles considered walking past her. But then, he remembered his own struggles and the kindness of those who had helped him. "Miss Luna," he said gently, standing a few feet away. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red, tears threatening to spill over. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tinged with bitterness. Charles regarded her for a moment, then said, "Life has a way of humbling us. Maybe this is your chance to grow." Charlotte didn't respond. She looked away, blinking back tears as his words sank in. Months later, Charlotte was no longer working at the firm. Her reputation as a bully had followed her, and job offers were scarce. She spent her days reflecting on her choices, haunted by the knowledge that her arrogance had cost her everything. Charles, on the other hand, thrived in his new role. He used his promotion to start a scholarship fund for underprivileged students in Accra, giving them a chance to build better futures. At the fund's first charity gala, Sophia gave a heartfelt speech about how Charles's resilience and kindness had inspired her. That evening, as Charlotte scrolled through social media, she stumbled upon photos from the gala. She saw Sophia, glowing with pride, and Charles, surrounded by smiling beneficiaries of the scholarship fund. For the first time, the full weight of her actions hit her. Charlotte set her phone down and stared out the window. She finally understood that her arrogance had blinded her to what truly mattered. Charles had shown her that kindness, integrity, and resilience were far more powerful than entitlement and cruelty. Life has a way of teaching us that how we treat others defines who we are. True strength lies in humility and the willingness to uplift others, even in the face of adversity. Hello besties, I love and appreciate you for watching till the end. Thank you. Support this channel to grow by sharing this story with your loved ones and friend. Give it a big thumb up and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.